Un fuerte aplauso a nuestro querido Charlie a conocer un poco más de él.
Charlie Hoehn. ¿Cómo aprovechar el poder del juego en los negocios? Pionero y experto a nivel mundial en desarrollo de nuevas formas de trabajo, promueve la implementación de juegos prácticos para facilitar la innovación y minimizar el agotamiento dentro de las empresas. Es autor de varios libros, entre los que destacan Play for a Living y Play It Away, catalogados como la cura para tu estrés. Ha compartido su filosofía de trabajo con Microsoft, el Pentágono, Stanford y TechX, cambiando la forma de pensar de millones de personas en el mundo. Demos la bienvenida a Charlie Hoehn.
Hola! That is all the Spanish you're going to be getting from me. Lo siento. Almost. All right. Life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone. That was said see if the slide deck can play with me. There we go. That was coined by a man named James Truslow Adams, and that is literally where the description for the American dream came from. And that is what the Declaration of Independence is really all about, which is freedom to be happy. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about, because the American dream, I feel, gets pursued in the wrong way very often. It tends to be about money and work and work and work. And what it leads to is this. Do you ever feel like you work too hard and life is passing you by show of hands? Yes. Do you ever feel like you've lost touch with some of your closest friends? Yes. Do you ever feel like it's a struggle to just let yourself be happy? Yes. And do you ever feel like you're living a life that isn't exactly true to who you are? By show of hands. Very brave. Thank you very much. And for saying yes to all of those, would you mind passing that book back to him? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, so, and my apologies on the proportions of the slides, but these are the 5 most common regrets of the dying, of people on their deathbed. It's, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends, and I wish that I had let myself be happier. And that is what my talk is really about, is how do we live our lives in such a way that we don't end up with these regrets. I do believe that life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone. But I believe the way of life needs to be adjusted. I believe the focus needs to be more on play. And I know some of you might bristle at that word. Bear with me. Justin Kahn said it well. He said, at the end of the day, all of us are trying to figure out how to feel like a kid again. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. So the problem is, adults tend to forget what play is like. As we get older, we think play is drinking, partying, gambling. We work hard and we play hard. They are separate worlds. And it leads to articles like this. What is fun? Can I have it? Will we ever have it again? I know I felt that way a bit after 2020. And so I want to show you guys what I have learned through both my personal experience and research and observation of creating a life that remains playful, that you don't lose touch with that part of yourself that matters so much, that leads to a life that feels well lived. And once you go through these steps on this path, work will feel like play. You'll be closer than ever to your friends and family. Experiencing joy will become a daily habit, not happiness, not the temporary state, but joy, inner fulfillment. And you'll feel more aligned with your life, your spirit, your heart than you possibly have been in years. So my big promise to you is how to infuse play into your life. How do you dissolve the line between work and play so that life feels like it's all play without looking foolish or irresponsible, basically? So I know what some of you are probably thinking. Sounds nice, American guy. That won't work for me. Latin America is different. I beg to differ. It is the human condition. And in fact, one of my favorite case studies is a company called Semco, where the CEO before was taking life very seriously, super serious, and his employees were miserable because he was a micromanager, and it even affected his health. He ended up in the hospital. But when he started infusing play back into his life, he created the #1 company culture in Brazil. They grew by annual percentage in revenue 47% per year for decades, and he became one of the top business leaders in all of Brazil. And so I would encourage you to stay open to these concepts, and that perhaps they can revolutionize how you approach business, your life, your family, and your relationship with yourself. And this is a disclaimer. I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just going to share what worked for me. If it resonates with you, I'd invite you to try it, possibly implement some of it into your life as you see fit. If it doesn't resonate, cool, leave it. Sound good? Yes? Great. All right, so I'm going to give you my story very quickly. So, and you can read about it if you'd prefer. As was mentioned, a little under a decade ago, I went through a period of very severe burnout. I thought I was going crazy at the time. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was getting sick. I thought I was potentially dying. It was a very challenging period. And I remember specifically one night, my girlfriend at the time, she said, "Charlie, what happened to you? You're not the guy that I met. What is wrong? What is going on with you?" And it was the first time I'd really admitted to anybody what I was going through and what I felt. And I told her, "I feel dead inside all the time, and I have no idea how to fix it." And I remember she started crying when she heard that, and I felt jealous that she could cry because I couldn't. I just felt hollow. And I had tried everything to get out of this state. I had talked to doctors. They had recommended pharmaceuticals, therapy, meditation, yoga, different exercises, different diets, supplements. I did psychedelics. I did a 9-day fast. I tried everything. And at the end of all this experimentation, nothing worked. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I'll be able to make it through life if I feel this way all the time. It was exhausting. And what put me in that position was I was in a series of high-profile jobs. I suddenly found myself at a young age working with people who I felt were very much above me, and I was just holding on for dear life. And suddenly my life became about status, success, power, money. And I was in Silicon Valley, and at the time, Facebook had just bought Instagram for like $1 billion. It was a crazy time, it seemed. And so I put myself in this place where all of a sudden I felt extraordinarily burned out. I tried everything, nothing worked, until one day I came across a book at my friend's apartment called Play by Dr. Stuart Brown. And I sat down and I read this book in one sitting. And while I was reading it, I started laughing. You see, this book talks about why mammals play, why human beings play. Why did we evolve to do something so frivolous, to do something that seemingly is childish and almost a luxury? Well, it turns out that play is essential. It is the reason we are the top species on the planet. Play is hardwired in our mind. The neural circuitry for play is as ancient as sleep and sex. And it is not something for kids exclusively. That circuitry stays in our brains our entire lives. We are supposed to play our entire lives. Otherwise, evolution would have pruned away that circuitry. It would have been excessive. We wouldn't have needed it. Biology is very efficient, and we need play for many reasons. So and I'll get into those reasons, but the quotes that made me laugh were, "A lack of play should be treated like malnutrition. It's a health risk to your body and mind." We all know how many cups of water we're supposed to have each day. 8. We all know how many hours of sleep we need to have each day. 8. How many of us track our hours of play? None of us. The other thing that made me laugh was the opposite of play isn't work, it's depression. And so I thought to myself, all right, this is like the one thing I have not tried. I might as well give this a shot. And what that required was for me to look at my play history. What did I do growing up, repeatedly, voluntarily? Because it was fun, where no one was judging me, no one was paying me, no one was grading me. I wasn't doing it with any specific goal. I was doing it because I was just being alive. I was being a human being. I was being myself. And for me, the first thing that came up was catch, playing baseball. I grew up playing catch with my dad in the backyard, and that was as far as I could think back to play that I intentionally chose for myself repeatedly, voluntarily. And so the next day, a guy emailed me, and he said, "Hey, Charlie, you want to go have a meetup over coffee and talk about how important we are to each other?" And I said, "Why don't we go play catch at the park instead? It's a lot more stimulating than drinking stimulants." And so that's what we did. We went to the park and we played catch. And what I noticed after that catch meeting was I felt something I hadn't felt in years, which was joy. It felt like a weight had been lifted, and so I thought, okay, this seems to have worked. I'm going to double down on this. And so I started having catch meetings instead. And then I started playing home run derby on the weekends. And each time I felt a little bit lighter, a little bit more joyful. So I thought, all right, I'm going to go all in on play. And so I signed up for improv comedy classes, which sounds like a nightmare if you're struggling with anxiety and that sort of thing. But improv really set me free, because improv is the relearning of play, of what you knew when you were a kid. The central principle in improv is yes and. Whatever you're handed, whatever presents itself, you say yeah and go with it. And so practicing that suddenly changed how I was approaching life. Instead of having so much resistance and being fearful, suddenly everything was as it was supposed to be, even the bad things. I remember there was this moment where I was in the grocery store, and the cashier asked for my credit card, and I handed it to her, and just as she reached for it, I pulled it away. And she looked at me, and she started laughing. And it was at this moment that I realized, gosh, we all love to connect through play, even through silly little things like that when it's harmless. And suddenly, the more I played, the more I had this energy, the more I found myself surrounded by other people playing too. Human beings are very good at responding to invitations to play, generally speaking. And so the more I played, the more joyful my world became. I remember this lesson in improv we would just hit a balloon back and forth up in the air. And that's what we would do, and it was super fun. And then the instructor told us to start counting. And it added this layer of pressure instantly. And if the balloon fell, all of us would go, oh, like the game didn't even matter, right? The score did not matter. But when the balloon fell, we went, oh. And he said, no. When the balloon falls, that was supposed to happen. Play it as though you meant it. Accept it. There was another, my favorite lesson was, there was this scene where these two people came out and they did a scene together, and it was just kind of uncomfortable. I watched it and I was like, why is this so weird and uncomfortable to watch? And then the scene ended, and the instructor comes out and he says, okay, try it again, except this time you like each other. And they went out again, and it was awesome to watch. It was like all of a sudden, it was clear they wanted to be there. Whereas before, it looked like they were almost fighting each other. And I think that is the biggest lesson I learned from improv. So I want to just take a moment here for you to turn to a neighbor and just introduce yourselves. Just if you haven't introduced yourself, just turn to them, say hello, and introduce yourself. Do that now, please. Okay. Very nice, very nice. Now, I want you to try this again, except this time, you like each other. You're good friends. Take a moment to do that now. A little bit of a lift in energy. Did anybody feel the lift in energy? Just that subtle shift. This is really what play is all about. If you talk to biologists and sociologists, they all debate, these are the things that make up play. I don't think it really matters. I think what play is really about is choosing to enthusiastically say yes to whatever life hands you, to whatever is presented, so that you can flow with it. And this is, by the way, this is not toxic positivity. It's not saying you're happy all the time. Let me be very clear. If life hands you a bad hand, it is okay to be upset. What I'm saying is that you can embrace again how a child looks at the world. That the world is a playground. Everyone around you is a potential playmate, and life is play. You can approach it as a game. So let's practice one more time. Turn to a neighbor again. And what you're going to do is you're going to give them an imaginary gift. So here's how that works. The person giving will hand you a fake gift. They'll give it a shape even. Here you go. You're the receiver, and you are going to accept it. You're going to be so glad that you got this gift from them. It's the perfect thing that you've always wanted, and you're going to give it a name and tell them how you're going to use it. Is that clear? Yes? Do that now. Excellent. Did anyone enjoy that little interaction? No one enjoyed it? Okay. I see a lot of smiles. Thank you. Awesome. So let's get into the actual path to a playful life now. So step one is to use play to love each other, to love those you care about. Did you know that a study found that playfulness is the most attractive quality ever to both sexes? It's true. Both sexes list sense of humor, fun-loving, and playful among the most important characteristics they look for in a potential long-term partner. It's also effective for short-term partners if you're into that as well. Playfulness matters, and this was the turning point for my wife and I, is when we played together. It was where we realized we were a good connection. I'll tell you, she would hate me for showing you these pictures, by the way. But these are my two favorite pictures I've taken of my wife in one day. One, obviously, she's just kind of being a goofball. But the other was she was eating barbecue ribs in a parking lot because she was so hungry, and she was crying, laughing while she was doing it. And I just find that so endearing. Like, I don't want to see these glamorous shots of her or anything. I love that. I love that quality in my wife. And this is one of her favorite pictures she's ever taken of me, where I had too many dog poop bags, and so I just made a tie, and she just found it hilarious. And it's the same with everybody. We find these traits very endearing to be playful with each other. This is when we most are attracted to each other, and this includes friends as well. There's a great book called The 4 Habits of a Joy-Filled Marriage. And what's interesting is that our brains tend to bond with our partners in one of two ways, through fear or joy. When we bond with fear, what that looks like is we no longer smile, we hide our emotions, we wear masks so that people will not be happy to see you if you act like yourself. Isolation, shutting down when problems come up and losing the desire to be relational, and treating someone who should be a friend or a loved one more like an enemy. I have experienced this. Has anyone else experienced fear bonding? Yeah, it's not fun. A joy bond is characterized by lots of smiles, positive feelings from being together or even in thinking about it. The security to act like yourself around the other person. An ability to connect safely at an emotional level, and the sense that you are with your people. Anybody experience this? Much better, isn't it? And the pathway to get to a joy bond is play. It is the path. And relationships are difficult, right? I love this because it feels so accurate. The one on the left says, this is a small issue as a stand-in for a bigger issue. And the one on the right says, I'm having a defensive reaction from childhood, right? And I've totally been there. I've definitely been the blue one. I remember my wife and I, we had a fight several years ago where we just kept butting heads, and we weren't making any progress, and it was just so tense, this fight. Man, fights in marriage, right? And so after a while, I suddenly just said, you know what? Let's switch roles. You be me, and I'll be you. And immediately she was like, oh, I'm so depressed. I never get what I want. And I was like, well, I'm going on Instagram, and I'm going to tell all my friends about this. And right there, it just broke the tension. It was like immediately fight allowed us to get out. And so in each fight that we've had, when we can kind of feel the fears creeping in, we look for the window, for the opportunity to play. And I would invite you to do the same. It works quite well. Because at heart, we are all just kids inside, in grown-up bodies with egos, and it's easy for us to get hurt, right? This was our Christmas card, by the way, in 2020, because that year was crazy. So a quick case study, there was a CTO who reached out to me, and he said, you know, before my marriage was falling apart, I didn't have a relationship with my kids. My wife was getting ready to leave me. I was struggling with alcoholism, and everybody at my company actually feared me. I was good at my job, but people were afraid of me. I didn't have friends that I couldn't fire. And then he started adding play back into each of his relationships. He'd play games with his wife. He'd play kickball with his kids. He rebuilt his marriage, built a relationship with his kids, was able to stop drinking, and he said the most amazing part was he would show up at work and he was like, oh, I've been thinking of cutting people down this whole time. I didn't even realize it. And now he was able to start building people up. And he actually had real relationships at work. So this is a tip for anybody who has kids, especially young kids. There is a great exercise called Story Spine. And if you can, take a picture of this because this is something you should totally do with your little kids. It's a game where you just make up a story. And it's simple, but Pixar uses this formula when they're developing stories for their movies. And just make up a story. Either tell them a bedtime story, do it just by yourself, or do it with them and take turns. So once upon a time, you do that, and then they do it every day, and then switch back. And I promise, this game, kids are spellbound. They love it. I've been doing it for over a year with my 5-year-old. Highly recommend it. So that's step 1, is play to love. Step 2 is to play for a living. I always crack up when I see these headlines like, kids now dream of being professional YouTubers rather than astronauts. Because it's like, yeah, kids are smart. They see YouTubers get to do fun things. They get to see that they get paid to play. It's not shocking. I remember a friend of mine was like, China's the only country that kids still want to be, doctors, engineers, astronauts, and they don't even have YouTube on their list. And I was like, I hate to break this to you, China doesn't have YouTube. And so if they did, I bet it would be on their list. This is a quote from Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. She said, most of us harbor a secret belief that work has to be work and not play, and that anything we really want to do must be frivolous and a distant second. And this is not true. I've found this to be 100% accurate. It is not true. The number one strongest form of motivation for work, it isn't purpose, it's not passion, it's not making more money, it's play. It is the work is good enough by itself. This is why you hear people like Thomas Edison say, I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun. Warren Buffett said, it's not work to me, it's just another form of play. And this is how I ended up working alongside Tim Ferriss, is I spent months trying to get jobs, applied to over 100 jobs I didn't want, got rejected by 100% of them, and then I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to create little projects for myself and send them to people I want to work with. And what happened when I started playing, instead of asking to work, is I got dream job after dream job after dream job after dream job. It was super effective. And I'm going to teach you how I did it. So this is called the tag method. It's really easy, and all it is you pick the person or the company that you want to work for. You do an audit. Basically, you play doctor and look at everything that they've posted online, all the work they're doing, the products they're releasing, and you just look for opportunities to make the work better. And you figure out how you could be that person to help improve what they're currently doing with your existing skill set. And then you make them a gift and send it to them. It can be a report. It can be the thing that actually solves their problems. It could even just be a playful way of applying to the job that shows that you're a creative person. I'll give you a case study, like I said, this is exactly what I did with Tim. He was one of the people that I ended up working with. It was because of that method. The case study of the most recent person I helped is a guy named McCall. He started off, when he came to me, as a board consultant. He hated his job. He was miserable. He said, I want to do something fun and creative and get paid well to do it. And so we went through the tag method, and he sent his gift to Mr. Beast. Does anybody know who Mr. Beast is? One of the most popular YouTubers. He has a YouTube channel called Mr. Beast in Espanol. And McCall ended up landing a job running his philanthropy channel that has millions of followers and got paid 6 figures to do so. Works really well. So I want you to quickly turn to your neighbor and just ask, what was the play that led to your career today? What was that moment when work used to feel like play before it became work? What was that? Share with your neighbor now. So I hate to interrupt. I want you to keep going, but I just want to be mindful of time. So this is a bit of an insight. And if you don't know, that's totally fine. It's very normal. But this is part of the process in returning to playing for a living, is rediscovering what were those moments that gave you a sense of freedom, a sense of mastery, a sense of connection. Step 3 is to play stress away. I saw this the other day. Burnout comes for the C-suite. And I get it. Like, C-suite does not have an easy job. I am not envious of it. But I think this is the big problem that we see over and over for work, is that people just keep burning out because they never step away. And stepping away can save you. One of my favorite stories is of a Finnish school, a school in Texas. The teacher was exhausted. The kids were acting out. They were bullying each other, breaking equipment, and she was just at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do. And so she looked into the #1 education system in the world, which was Finland, to see what they did differently. You know what they did? 2 hours of recess a day. 4 recesses per day, which was crazy for her. And so she started experimenting and doing that for her students, and all the behavioral issues went away. All of them. Kids got along, behavioral issues stopped, and I have a theory that because adults are just outgrown children, that these toxic workplaces that we hear about are really the byproduct of adults who never step away. They're always stressed out. And when adults are always stressed out, they become jerks. This is my friend Erin Tyler. She's a graphic designer. She said, there was this one night she was so stressed out. She was like, oh, I'm on this deadline. I got to get in this website for a client. I'm just going to pull an all-nighter. I have so much work to do. And we said, do you want to come play mini golf with us? And she said, did you not hear a word I just said? But we convinced her to come play mini golf. And after a little bit, she loosened up. And at the end of the night, she said, you know what? I'm just going to go back. I'm going to sleep. And then I'll miss the deadline. That's okay. I just got to deal with it. The next day, she texted us and she said, you guys, I got all the work done in an hour and a half. and it was good. I hit the deadline. And this is the power of play. This is why it makes me laugh when people say it's a waste of time. It's not. By definition, sleep is a waste of time if you look at life that way, right? But sleep makes you far more productive. And it's the same with recess. I actually ran a recess group for adults in Austin for a couple years, and I learned some useful lessons. Do you want to know my formula for the perfect recess? Cool. Number one, you have to detach from work. This is the important part, is psychological detachment. Do not be checking your emails. Do not be attached to your work while you're doing it. Get outside. We evolved in nature. We evolved looking at fractals, not at flat surfaces and screens. Move your body. I don't care if you exercise. I don't care if you get on a treadmill. I care that you just move. Just be active. Invite a friend. Bring them with you. And bring kids or dogs, because they're the best players in the world, and they will help you get into that state. So that's my formula. It's very simple, but it helps a ton if you are stressed out. The minimum effective dose I have found is 2 15-minute recesses per day. If that's just an outside walk, if you're just doing walking meetings, cool, totally fine. Just do it as best as you can. So that's playing stress away. Step forward, this is especially for the leaders in the room, the executives, the managers. Play the fool. Gary Vaynerchuk had a quote that I really liked. He said, "If you think the Great Resignation was bad, wait until you see the great never applied to in the first place." People do not leave companies. They leave joyless jobs and people who don't treat them fairly, who don't treat them well. And how do you fix this? You play the fool if you're a leader. Now let me explain what I mean by that. Lab rats, if you get 2 lab rats, one big, one small, they will not play with each other if the bigger lab rat wins more than 70% of the time. The smaller rat has to win a minimum of 30% of the time in order for the play to continue. If you think about how this applies to humans, CEOs, executives, they're the winners in the company. They're always winning. The average employee does not get to experience that, right? And so I'm not asking you, when I say play the fool, to be Michael Scott from The Office. What I'm asking you is to be more like Stephen Gillett. Stephen is the former CEO of Best Buy, CTO of Starbucks. He was an executive at Google. The guy's resume is insane. And I was talking to him the other week, and I asked, "How do you play at work?" And he said, "I play video games with my team where I'm one of the worst players." So suddenly, they get the opportunity to be higher status than him, to teach him, to help him win. And because of that, it creates trust and camaraderie and a bond that he cannot get if he's constantly the smartest and most successful person in the room. And these are numbers based on what you can see when you successfully implement playing. The real benefit of playing the fool is you remove the fear of failure. You remove imposter syndrome. And when salespeople especially have play in the culture, it's consistently shown to boost sales 20 to 35% because they no longer fear looking foolish. I've worked at this company for the last 6 years, Scribe. They've won dozens of awards. They've consistently won Greatest Place to Work. They won Best Place in America, Best Company Culture in America in 2018. And what's unique is how the people who run the company operate. The guy on the left is a good friend of mine named Tucker. He is the founder. The guy on the right, also a good friend, is Javon. He's the CEO. They could not be more different. Tucker, as much as I love the guy, is always the smartest person in the room, and he knows it. And Javon however, as the CEO, his childhood, he was the son of a pimp and an orphan. He grew up in the ghetto, in the slums. He always feels like he's not supposed to be in the room. And so there was a brainstorming session where these guys, Tucker was, everybody was submitting ideas, and Tucker, after each one, would criticize. No, that would never work. Javon, on the other hand, stood back and asked questions. He just wanted to know more. And I used to do workshops for Scribe where we would practice these principles of looking foolish, playing the fool, to boost this sense of teamwork and camaraderie. And what was interesting was Tucker never came. But you know who did? Javon. And Javon recently won Austin's Best CEO. He is beloved. People are afraid of Tucker. They are not afraid of Javon, even though Javon is the CEO. So play the fool. It matters. So this is the path to having a more playful life. Play to love, play for a living, play your stress away, and play the fool. And if you want to get kind of the blueprint, the resources I recommend and everything from this talk, I'd encourage you to grab it there. I'll be sending it tomorrow, but if you want it, you can grab it right now. I'll give you a second to snap a picture. And I'm also going to be here for the next few days, and I'm going to be doing a play shop, not a workshop, a play shop. So if you're interested in that, feel free to sign up, and I'll reach out to you with more details. Sound good? All right. Okay, everybody good? You can see some phones in the air. Good? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to wrap up with this. Eckhart Tolle said, "You'll realize the whole world of form is a game to be played and enjoyed. You're simply playing. Perhaps one day all humans will live like that, but we have to make a start. If we don't make a start now, that day will never come." And I see that being the optimal direction for humanity to head in. And I see it happening. Web3 is coming. People are able to make a living by playing. And I think that life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone if we do it through play. And it starts with you. So do you remember when you were a kid? When the world was a playground, people were playmates and life was play? It still is. It still can be. Confucius said, "We have two lives, and the second one begins when we realize we only have one." And so I want you to try living your life again. Except this time, remember to play. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias, Charlie. Ojalá que nos ayudes a partir de ahora a poder disfrutar un poquito más la vida. Don't go. Oh, all right. Go ahead. Tenemos algunas preguntas que ustedes nos están haciendo a través de la app. Para quienes tengan duda, atrás de su gafet está el código QR. Con este bajan la aplicación súper rápido y ahí justamente hay un icono con un signo de interrogación. Ahí pueden ir poniendo sus preguntas a todos nuestros speakers. Ya tenemos algunas. Are you ready? In English, don't worry about it. Yeah, I will try.
Okay.
I once heard that play and games help us calibrate the rules and roles in society. What is your favorite game to do so?
Calibrate the rules and
And
roles
yeah.
in society. My personal favorite games are all related to improv. Again, it's can you just walk into the moment, create something new, and even if it's strange, even if you're uncomfortable with it, can you roll with it? and make something of it. So I think improv to me maps most closely to life and the roles that we play, but everybody's play, I think, is different, and one person's play is another person's hell. And so some of you might hate improv, that's fine. I'd encourage you to choose whatever play is for you.
All right, so let's go to the second question. It says, what kind of play do you recommend to motivate a team?
What kind of play do I recommend to motivate a team? Not to sound like a broken record, but improv workshops work exceptionally well. There was a sales team I worked with a while back, and all they did was for 1 hour per week, they just goofed off. And they were doing sales calls on behalf of Fortune 500 companies, and just doing that lowered their fear of failing, of making a mistake, and it raised their sales attainment goals to record highs in the company. So I've just seen improv work so well for NBA teams, big tech companies. It works exceptionally well.
Right, for all kind of companies, right?
Yep.
Great. And then it says, in your opinion, what is the most important strategy in your business?
The most important strategy in my
in
business.
Your business, yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, I hate to sound like a broken record. It's playing with people I want to connect with. You know, it's like if there's a great quote from Plato where he says, "You can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation." And so, if I want to get to know somebody, I'll invite them to do something playful.
All right,
Yeah.
and there is one more that says, how can you manage or achieve respect as the boss, but at the same time apply games in the business? I mean, how do you achieve it?
Yeah, to reiterate that last point, how do you achieve playfulness as a boss without lowering your respect and responsibility? It's to find the game that you can all play together where you're not winning all the time, but you're still having fun with the people you work with and care about.
All right, it says the next one, how to mix this way to be with the new generations and its ecological mind.
An illogical mind or
Yeah.
technological mind?
I think it's technological, right? Because it says exological.
Is it exological? Does that mean technological? Does anybody?
Exological, it says.
Exological? I don't want to answer it incorrectly necessarily. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this just goes back to we are all kids. And so parents, I think, they have a lot of resistance to, I don't want my kid to play video games too much. Have you considered playing the video games with your kids? You know, that goes a very long way in preventing addiction. And so it would just be a quick point, but one of the most interesting studies was, you know, social media is particularly hard on teenagers. Just their brains, the way they're developing, it creates a lot of anxiety, mental health issues. They found that if they did it together as a group in the same room and they were doing it as friends, it mitigated and prevented all the mental health issues. And so it's really just using play as a means for connection. And so the younger generation, I don't think it matters. I think they're human beings, and you connect with them on the level of their language.
I think the next one is very interesting because of the situation of the world with the violence and all the things we are living. It says, how to soften the coworkers that are angry with life, that feel like some anger. How do you
soften the
yeah,
anger?
How do you manage this feeling?
For one, I can absolutely appreciate where that anger is coming from. And I have sympathy for anybody who is angry. I cannot tell you what will work for you or for everyone, but I can tell you what has worked for me. And when I have been angry at the world or at life's circumstances, I was just telling Marcos about this earlier. The thing that has helped me is actually kind of leaning into a different type of pain that's healthy and productive, right? And so, for instance, I lift heavy weights in the morning first thing, so I'm like, this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me today. And so just by doing that, you know, there's all sorts of benefits, obviously, but I think not trying to resist it, but expressing it, but also leaning in and saying, you know what, like, I can handle this, and I'm going to do what's needed to handle it. That has worked for me.
Okay, we have one more. We don't have a lot of time, but let's
Sorry,
try.
yeah, I went long.
What can we do if I work in a company and I'm very interested to introduce the game or the play or whatever, but my boss does not want to?
Yes, yes.
It happens, right?
Totally. So there's a few things you can do. If you have a very rational boss, you can just point to the statistics. And in fact, there's a great book called Primed to Perform. And this lays out that many of the top performing companies in the world all have a culture of play that really values it. But if they're purely rational, you can just point to the statistics. 66% fewer sick days, 30% boost in sales, 25% boost in productivity. Like, these things add to the bottom line, and you can do the math. There's on Delivering Happiness, their website, deliveringhappiness.com, they have an ROI calculator for what happens when you incorporate play. So you can show them this will help the bottom line. But if they're an emotional person, like we all are, I think just connecting in the way I did as best as I could on, like, look, this isn't a wildly crazy concept. This is like what we all want deep down, and connecting with them on that level, I think, goes a long way.
Charlie, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Vamos
much.
a darle un reconocimiento a nuestro ponente del día de
Thank
hoy.
you all.
Please don't go, Charlie. Please don't go because they are coming
yep.
to you. Es Charlie Coral Montaño que también le entrega
Thank you,
este
Coral.
reconocimiento. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Gracias.